Okay, in this video we're going to talk about converting rectangular coordinates to polar coordinates. Previously we may have done polar coordinates to rectangular. Now we're going to go in the opposite direction. So let's start with the first example, and that is I want to convert, that's rectangular coordinates, I want to convert it to polar coordinates, which have r and theta. So we have to go back to some things that that we know about polar coordinates and rectangular. First of all, x is equal to r cosine theta, y is equal to r sine theta, and this is based off the unit circle, or not the unit circle, but by looking at theta, opposite over hypotenuse, that's the y, adjacent over hypotenuse, and that. So based on this, we can also do y over x, which is opposite over adjacent. That is the tangent of theta. So I'm going to write that there. Tangent of theta equals y over x. Alright, so here we are with x and y. X is equal to -1, y is equal to 1. If we use this and plug in a -1, all we're going to get is r cosine theta. And that doesn't really help us because we still have r and theta to figure out. But if we use the tangent formula, we can use both the y's and the y and the x. So now we've got tangent theta is y over x, which would be 1 over -1, which is just -1. So what we want to know is, where is the tangent of the angle theta equal to -1? So let's go back down. I'm going to expand out a unit circle a little bit more. So remember, we have different places, like this would be pi over 3, this would be pi over 4, and then we've got, I'm sorry, that's pi over 6. Pi over 3 would be up here. So as we go around, we've got different coordinates. For the pi over 6, it is square root 3 over 2 and 1/2. For pi over 4, it's square root 2 over 2 and square root 2 over 2. Now when we do the tangent y over x, since y and x are the same, this over this is just equal to 1. Okay, but we're looking for the tangent to be -1, so we have to have one of these to be a negative number. Well, if you come over here to quadrant 2, this angle right here will give us negative square root 2 over 2 and positive square root 2 over 2. That's pi over 4, so this is 3 pi over 4. But we also have down here, we've got positive square root 2 over 2 and then negative square root 2 over 2. So now that would also give us a tangent of -1. So which one is it? Well, we go back to the fact that we know our x is -1, our x is negative, and our y is positive, so it has to be quadrant 2. If it was the other way around, it would be down here. So now we know what we're dealing with. We're dealing with this quadrant here. So we know our theta is 3 pi over 4. So now all we have to do is find the r. Okay? Well, one of the other formulas, I'm just going to block these off here. And actually come down here. One of the other formulas is r squared equals x squared plus y squared. That's like your basic Pythagorean formula. So if I use this to find my r, I just say r squared equals x squared. We know x is -1, plus y squared, which is 1. So I have r squared, oops, I ran out of room. So I have r squared equal to -1 squared is 1, plus 1 squared is 1. So I have r squared. Now I'm going to come back up here. R squared equals 2, so r is equal to plus or minus square root 2. Now remember back in the problem it says r needs to be greater than 0. So we don't use the negative one and we just use the positive square root 2. So that's our r, that's our theta. So when we write the coordinates, it's square root 2, 3 pi over 4. Okay? Let's get ready and do another example. Okay, so I've organized the formulas up here in this corner to be a little more easy to work with. And the next problem is we want to convert the rectangular coordinates 3, 4, convert those to polar. So I would suggest you pause the video at this point and try to work the problem at least as far as you can, and then restart the video. Okay, so let's go ahead now. We're going to first of all look at how do we find theta. Remember, we're going to use the tangent. Okay, so the tangent is y over x. So tangent theta equals 4 over 3. And then, so in this case, 4 over 3 is not something on the unit circle, so we're going to have to use our calculator and find inverse tan of 4 over 3. In some ways that's easier. So now all we have to do is find the r. So the r is going to be found by r squared equals 3 squared plus 4 squared. 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, r squared equals 25. And since we only want the positive r's, then r is going to equal 5. So let's get our calculator and find out what inverse tan of 4 over 3 is. Okay, so if you're using the TI-84 or TI-83, then you can follow along with these steps. So basically, we're looking at, there's the tangent key. Inverse tan is the blue letters right above it. So we hit the second blue key and then tan. So that gives us tan inverse. And then we're going to go 4 divided by 3. All right, now our answer is going to be in radians. We get 0.927. So theta is 0.927. We're used to seeing different types of something with pi in it, but radians can also just be numbers. It doesn't always have to have a pi in there. So now we've got our theta, we've got our r, so we rewrite 5, comma, 0.927. And those are our polar coordinates, starting with the rectangular coordinates. Okay, so the next example is square root 8 for the rectangular coordinates. So I would suggest you pause the video, try it yourself, and then come back and look at the steps for the solution. Okay, so we're starting off, we want to find theta, so we've got to use tangent theta equal y over x. So in this case, y and x are the same, so tangent theta equals 1. And you remember from our unit circle, tangent theta equals 1 at pi over 4. And also down here where you got negative and negative, 5 pi over 4. Okay, so which one do we use? Well, these are both, x and y are both positive, so we have to use this one. So we automatically know that our theta is pi over 4. And then to find our r, we just do x squared, square root 8 squared, plus square root of 8 squared, equals, and square root of 8 squared, the square root and the squares cancel, we have 8 plus 8. R squared equals 16, so r is 4. And we write it as 4 comma pi over 4.